Okay, well, welcome back. The second lecture in our series is the ethics and economics of property rights and market competition. So how do we explain as a concept, as an idea, as a political principle, the origin of property rights? Well, in our Western tradition, it was really formalized by a famous English philosopher named John Locke. He wrote two books in the early part of the 1600s, around 1620. It's called Two Treatises on Government. It's famous in political philosophy. And he basically argued there that each and every individual has a natural right to his life, his liberty, and his property. Locke argued this on basically two grounds. One, he said, each of us as individual distinct human beings have these rights to our life, liberty, and property as given to us by our Creator. God has made each of us in His image. He has breathed life into us. He has given us consciousness. He has given us reason. He has given us will. And as reasoning and willing conscious creatures that are made in His image, He has given each of us a right to His life. No one may take your life but God. God gives life, God takes it away. God gives you liberty. And in the most fundamental sense, Locke meant freedom of conscience, most importantly, that is, acceptance of God for salvation or not. No man may deny you your liberty, and in this case, the most fundamental liberty, your freedom of conscience, to make this most profound and essential decision to accept salvation or not. All other free liberties are outgrowths of that most fundamental one of freedom of conscience, to do the right or the wrong, answerable ultimately to God. The other element is that Locke argued that our reason leads us to this as well. Are not all of us thinking and reasoning creatures? Do not all of us reflect in ourselves that we would not want others to impose harm upon us, to deprive any one of us of our life and our freedom, our liberty, to control our own lives, to be the determiner of the destiny of our own lives? And if this is true, that we would not want anyone to deprive us of these rights to our life and our liberty, then surely if we want our life and liberty to be respected, it falls upon us to reciprocally respect the life and liberty of all others. And that becomes the great moral principle of equal respect of each other's rights. Now, most fundamental, and I was alluding to this in the first lecture, is that Locke argues that the fundamental property right is you own yourself. This is your mind. This is your body. This is your mind and your body. It may not be violated. That is the argument. This is why this anti-slavery league, rose up against slavery, partly inspired by the type of argument that Locke was presenting. This is, you own yourself. And it's an abomination for one person to deny you your self-ownership. God gave you your mind. God gave you your body. God gave you your consciousness. You own it. The only person who can claim ownership above that is God Himself. What arrogance and presumption, what hubris, as I was suggesting in the first talk, that one man should claim to take ownership of another. All of us have this natural sense as well. Do you like to be forced upon? Do you like to be touched without your consent? Of course not. Why is it that each of us should find one of the most morally repugnant acts the act of rape? What is more a violation of yourself than, if I can express it the way, a literal invasion of yourself without your consent? Is that not the most violent and denial of your own self-ownership? Of course it is. Of course it is. You own yourself. That is your most fundamental and essential and inherent property right. What else then does freedom mean, Locke is asking us? You're not owned by the lord of the manor, like the old medieval or feudal system. You're not owned by the slave master. You're not owned by the king. You own yourself. You are self-governing and self-ruling. I often tell my American students, when I talk about these things, about that American Declaration of Independence and the idea of the American Constitution, which was established forming the United States a few years later after we had won our independence from the British, is that the concept in the Declaration and in the U.S. Constitution that we are a self-governing people. We elect the representatives. We choose who will hold political office. But I suggest to my students that when the American founders wrote that Declaration of Independence and designed that U.S. Constitution, they had another meaning of self-governing. Not just the self-governing of we, the people who participate in election and appoint a prime minister or a president or a mayor or a governor or whatever. No. More important and essential of that is that the premise is that each individual is a self-governing human being. That is the very notion of freedom, that we are sovereign. I decide what my goals, values, and purposes will be. I decide what meaning I will give to my life. I decide the means and methods that I consider most appropriate and effective and useful to achieve these goals, purposes, and ends that I've chosen to give meaning, value, and purpose to my life. I am self-governing. I rule myself. That's what freedom means. I choose my career. I choose how I'm going to spend my income when I go to the supermarket. I choose who I'm going to marry. I'm going to choose how I will plan the friendships and associations and relationships I peacefully and voluntarily enter into with others. That is what ownership means. I am a self-governing, sovereign individual. And that Constitution, as I was explaining, even under democracy, is meant to say that I am a sovereign individual who may not be violated, who may not be invaded unless I have violated the rights of another, and therefore government is called upon to control my actions because I have abridged another person's equal and equivalent individual rights. Now, Locke then argued that besides your right to your life and your liberty, an extension of that is a right to property. Now, what does it mean to have a just, a rightful ownership of property? In natural resources, in raw materials, in the land. I mean, fine, I have my mind and I have my body. I've noticed that I kind of like to eat a couple of times a day at least. In my case, perhaps too much. My wife is saying, don't eat that, go out and exercise. I know, you know, no pain, no gain, but I don't like the pain. Okay, anyway. She keeps working on me. Someday, before I die, it might succeed. Anyway, but, okay. But the point is, we are material beings. That's how we are made. We need food to eat, we need clothing to cover ourselves, we need shelter to protect us from the elements, and so on. The necessities, the amenities, and even the conveniences and luxuries that we like to have in life. That is all dependent upon the use of the material resources of the world. We clear the field and we lay the seed and we plant the crop and there's our food. We raise or hunt down animals and that's part of the ingredients out of which we make our clothing. And so on. Everything requires use of material resources. Now Locke argues that there are two bases of an individual's right of just ownership of the material resources of the world, to claim it as his property. One he claims as first settlement. The image here is like the unclaimed, unsettled land in some country. The image for Americans, of course, was the settlement of the American West. Right? The colonists came from Europe and they started moving west and occupying and settling, you know, the great territories to the Pacific Ocean. And yes, there were Indian tribes, but most of this was unclaimed, unoccupied, unused land. And this sort of encapsulated the image of what John Locke meant. The man who reaches unclaimed, unsettled land, and he marks off a boundary of it, and he builds himself a house, he clears the field, he lays the farrows, he plants the seeds, he tends the field, the crops start growing, it reaches its harvest time, and he then harvests it. And surely, the mixing of his labor with the land, that's the phrase that Locke used, mixing his labor with the land, and land meaning the broader sense, resources, raw materials, and as well as the land in the literal sense, honestly and justly gives it his. Just think of this image. Let's suppose that there's a piece of clay on the ground. It's clearly not owned by anyone, no one's claimed it, it's just a piece of clay. And you take it, and you start molding that clay into the shape of some statue. A person, a horsey, a dog, whatever you want to make the statue into. Okay? You had a vision, an image in your mind of the shape and final form that you want the statue to be in. And you may be good at it or not. It may be an excellent little statue, or it could be a crude and almost unidentifiable image of it, whatever the statue. But it's yours, right? You made it with the image of your mind, your thinking, and the use of your physical shaping of with your hands. It's yours. Now let's suppose I come along and I say, oh, how nice, crash. Would you not be offended? Oh, who are you to take my statue and just break it there? Or, oh, what a nice statue, and I walk away with it. Wait, that's my statue. I made it. In that most fundamental sense, don't we all feel a sense of injustice if it's taken from us? I made it. That's unclaimed clay. It didn't belong to anybody. I took it. I used my mind to imagine what it could be shaped into. However crudely and non-artistically, I tried to shape it into the statue that I had an image of. It's mine. Suppose that you had settled this unclaimed, unsettled land, and had laid the seeds and tended for the crop, and you harvested it now, and now bandits came down from the surrounding hills and proceeded to threaten your lives and plunder that which your labor had produced. Would you not feel a sense of injustice, of wrongness about this? I worked the land. I cleared it. I took care of it. I fertilized it. I irrigated it. I shooed away the crows as it was growing. It's my crop. Would not all of us have a sense of injustice in that? Of course we would. So Locke says that is the fundamental and original basis of a rightful claim to land and resources. The person who has settled the land and mixed, quote, his labor, mental and physical, with the resources of the world to make them into something or transform them in some way that was useful for his purposes. But wait a minute. Everything's been settled so far. What am I supposed to do? There's no land for me unclaimed land for me to settle and be a farmer on. And, everybody owns the sheep. How am I supposed to, have the wool to make myself a jacket? I mean, what the hell do I do? Well, that's the other basis that Locke says. The other means by which we can acquire what we need in a world in which many or most resources have already been settled and claimed by others, is that we are still free to use that most fundamental piece of property that we can never be separated from, and that is our own labor, mental and physical. For example, I don't own a farm. I don't own a coffee plantation. I don't own sheep. I don't own anything. I only have one thing to sell, and that's my labor services. So I, as Mr. Lowe explained, I am a professor of economics at Northwood University in Midland, Michigan. How do I acquire the things that I need for my survival? I sell my labor services, that property in myself. And I have human capital. That's the knowledge that I have, that I've accumulated through reading and experience in my mind. And I sell those labor services to Northwood University, for which they pay me a salary to do what? To perform a service for them. What is that? Teaching economics in various classes during the school year on campus. And why are they doing that? Because the students or their parents have paid for those young people to go to the university. So they can acquire the education to themselves go out into the marketplace and earn a living, as we are basically a business school. So accounting, marketing, management, international business. We have hotel management and catering. We have fashion design, entertainment, sports management, whatever and economics, of course. And so whatever you decide to, economics, the queen of the social sciences. Mentioning it last does not mean it's least. Okay, so you've acquired that, and I have all provided some of those services for the students to be prepared as reflected in the courses taken and the grades earned leading up to the diploma with which they'll enter the marketplace, the labor force. And with the money that I receive for providing my labor services with the property that I own, I then turn around with income earned and proceed to enter the marketplace and buy all the things that I need and desire. I go into the supermarket, the food store for my food, the clothing store, the shoe store. I buy the coffee that I like to drink, or the tea. So I sell my labor services for a value that it has to others in the marketplace. And with the income I have earned by providing that labor services with the property of myself that I own, I then re-enter the marketplace as a consumer, and I proceed to buy the things that I desire that others have produced and are offering in exchange. And that is how and through that method, the entire world is at my disposal, which is a theme that we'll have to talk about a little bit further as we go on in the next few lectures. The world is at my disposal. I don't have to own a coffee plantation in Brazil, let's say. Someone specializes in that and grows the coffee beans that get transported to the United States, that get processed in a coffee factory, so I can then have my cup of coffee when I go into class every morning. I don't have to own a farm to grow my own food. Others specialize in that. And they produce the food of the various types and varieties I'm interested in, as for all others who are interested in eating in the society, and they sell it to me and others who desire food for our meals. And the same thing with the sheep that may go into making the wool that are part of the things that I wear, and so on and so forth. The world is at my disposal, even though I don't own any of these things, through market exchanges and transactions. And so, as I said here, property is justly acquired either through first settlement or through voluntary trade of this sort. And now this gets us to a major and crucial element of understanding the logic and the workings of this. And this is Adam Smith and what he called the system of natural liberty. Now, Adam Smith is one, a lot of you are business students, taking some economics. I'm sure you've all heard of Adam Smith. He's a famous economist, a Scottish philosopher. He taught at the University of Glasgow. He almost, by the way, didn't become a professor. At the age of 3, he was stolen by gypsies. Yes, he was born in this little village in East Scotland, Kirkcaldy. His father died about the time he was born. His mother raised him. And he was out playing one day. His mother had taken him to visit an uncle in the town next to Kirkcaldy or something, if I remember correctly. And while he was out playing, a caravan of gypsies came by and they seized Adam Smith. And they took him away, and his mother, went out to, oh, Adam. Little Adam was not to be found. 3-year-old little Adam. And an alarm was going, and a little posse was from, and they tracked down these gypsies. And actually, the woman who's holding him dropped him. Luckily, not on his head. He wouldn't have become a famous economist. But that's the story. She saw them coming, and she dropped him. And little Adam, poor little Adam. Anyway, and so he was saying, what would have happened to economics if they had kept him? Adam said he would have grown up, reading palms, tarot cards. Who knows? But it would have been a loss to economics, no Adam Smith. Anyway, it's a true story. Okay, but But luckily, the gypsies didn't get him. And so he grew up, he became a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Glasgow. And he wrote 2 books, one called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, but for our economics purposes, his most famous book, published in 1776, An Inquiry into the Nature and the Causes of the Wealth of Nations. And in one part of this book, in about 2/3 of the way through the book, he has a section in which he talks about the system of natural liberty. The system of natural liberty. And what does he mean by a system of natural liberty? He means by this that each individual should have the freedom to pursue any profession, occupation, or trade of his choice. That's what it means to have liberty. Each individual is free to pursue any profession, occupation, and trade of his choice. And he may freely and peacefully compete against others in the pursuit of those to trade with. So in other words, you want to go into the shoe business, you're free to be a shoemaker and to try to get customer business in competition and rivalry against any other established shoe stores. You want to be a farmer, grow food, depending upon the crop you've decided to specialize in, and you're free to buy the land and invest your resources or borrow some money from Uncle Egbert and become a farmer and grow your wheat or your rice or whatever and compete with other food growers and so on. That's what a system of natural liberty is. That each individual is free to pursue any profession, occupation, or trade and to freely compete. That is, to peacefully attempt to gain consumer business in competition with others also practicing the same profession, trade, or occupation. And then what is the function and the duties of government? Well, it's basically, because he then says in the next paragraph in this passage of the book, what I enumerated, that he says government basically has functions of national defense, police, courts, and maybe a few what he called public works, like a bridge, a road, dredging a harbor. But other than that, Smith basically thinks everything else should be left to the private and peaceful interactive affairs of the citizenry. And that, in sum total, is what he means by a system of natural liberty. Now, if everyone is to have this freedom, someone can be going to the shoemaking business, another one can be a farmer, another one can go into cattle raising, another one can go grow coffee bean plants, whatever. If it's not going to be chaos. How do we make sure that the right things get produced in the right quantities and available to the people who need them? Well, everybody's just going to go into their own direction. It's going to be chaos. But Adam Smith says no. He says no, it will not be chaos. Because he explains it in the following way in the book. First he says, in fact, it's the opening chapter of the book. He says, men soon learn that there are gains from specializing in different types of trade, a division of labor. He explains that when men divide their labor, they raise the productivity of what they can do. In this first chapter of the book, it's called Of the Division of Labor. He says, imagine a pin factory, right? A hat pin factory. And he says, we can imagine, we can look in a factory like this and see that some people are stretching out the wire. And then after having stretched out the wire, they pass it on to another group of people, and these people cut the wire into uniform lengths. Well, this is going to be the shaft of the pin. Then they pass along those cut uniform shafts to another group of people in the pin factory who sharpen one end. Well, that's going to be the pointy part of the pin. And while all that is going on, some other people in the factory are hammering down metal like a pancake, and then in a cookie cutting fashion, making these little round tops. Well, that'll be the heads of the pins. And then when that has been done, it's passed on to another group of people who take the uniform cut shafts with one sharpened end and now attach that flat round head to the other end of the shaft through some method of soldering, that some 1770s method of soldering that Adam Smith does not clarify, but they attach through some soldering device the head of the pin to the shaft. Now he says that if each individual was to try to make pins by himself in self-sufficient, isolated production, himself having to do each of these steps in turn, doing one step and then passing to the next step, each person would be lucky if they made a handful of pins a day. But by dividing their labor and having sort of like this conveyor belt process, that work is continually going on and being passed on to the next, going on, that it is possible for this group of people in the small hat pin factory to make 10,000 pins in a day. By cooperating through specialization, we raise the productivity of all that we can produce. And then what do these people in the pin factory do? Well, they've made far more hat pins than they personally need. They sell their surpluses of hat pins to whom? To others who are not making hat pins, but who might have use for hat pins. And what are those people selling to buy the hat pins from these hat pin specialists? The products that they specialized in. The people who specialized in making shoes in their own version of this conveyor belt process, or making clothes, or growing food, or. And each of these groups trade away their specialized products that cumulatively the amount of output, the quantity of output, the quality of the output, the variety of the output is far greater through this trading of our respective specializations than if all of us tried to make everything we individually need through our own individual isolated production. And therefore, interdependency through specialization improves the standard of living of all. Now, Adam Smith makes clear in that system of natural liberty, as I was explaining it, what is the fundamental principle of the free society? Principles of the free society. Well, these are older than Adam Smith or John Locke. They're merely presenting their own versions of an older code of morality. And what is that older code of morality? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness or covet thy neighbor's goods, right? No fraud and deception. Certainly try to control envy. Okay? Well, if I can't kill you, and if I can't rob you, and if I can't try to cheat you, what the hell is left to get what you have that I want? I have to get you to give it to me. Well, I can plead and beg with you. Oh, you know, like the panhandler in the street. Can you spare a quarter? You know. But we can't expect that people are just going to constantly give us things to live off their productions. Because if everyone does that, where's the production for people to live off? So how, Smith says, do we acquire what others have that we desire when we can't rely only or solely or primarily on their generosity and their charity? He says we apply to their self-interest. As he says, the essence of every bargain is the following: if you do this for me, I will do that for you. We do not appeal to their generosity, as he says, but to their self-love. You have the food that I want. I don't know how to grow the food. I don't own the resources to grow the food, but I can make a pair of shoes. I and the other people who are participating in a shoe manufacturing process. If you will sell some of the food that you have, I will give you in turn the pair of shoes that you might desire. And through this process, Smith says, each individual in a situation of specialized division of labor interdependency, right? Because I produce one or a handful of things, but I'm dependent upon what everyone else is specialized in for the vast majority of the things that I need and desire. If we are interdependent in this way on each other, yet I can't kill you, I can't steal from you or defraud you, then I must ask myself, in my own self-interest, what is it that I could do applying my mental creativity and my physical ability and any resources that might be at my disposal? What is it that I can specialize in the production of that others would be willing to take in trade so I may acquire in exchange those things that they have that I desire? This means, Smith says, that without compulsion, without force, without command, each individual will search in his own self-interest to find ways to serve his fellow men. Now he admits, this is without intention. He says each man is pursuing their own self-interest, But though it is no part of their intention, they often serve the common good better than when they consciously try to serve society. And this is what Adam Smith calls the invisible hand of human cooperation and mutual betterment. Look at the society in which we live. Where do you get the food that you eat each day? Where do you get the clothes that you're wearing? Where did I get the glasses? Where did the camera come from that Mr. Lowe is using to tape me? Hi, Mom. Okay. I mean, where did all this come from? It came from the efforts and productions and specialized industries of others in society. How did you acquire it? Or your students, your parents. They are working. They're producing some product, offering some service in the society. And they have sold those products, offered their services in exchange to others who are producing the things that you and your parents desire. Now, it is true we do this through money. I don't directly sell my teaching services to the local supermarket. I fear that if I went to the local supermarket and told the manager, you know, I need a few loaves of bread, some quarts of milk, a pound of hamburger meat, and tell you what I'm going to do. And if you sell me those things, I'm going to give you and your employees 2 econ lectures. I have a feeling I'm going to starve. Go figure. They don't want to hear economics to sell me the bread. I don't understand this. So what do we do? It's shocking. Perverse preferences. I don't know. They don't want to hear economics. Anyway, so what we do is we do it through the intermediation of money. Northwood pays me a money salary for my labor services in this way, and then I turn around and use the money I've earned to buy all the other things that I desire in society. Even though if all those specific people who sell me with the things I want would themselves concretely have never wanted to hear an econ lecture. But why do they take the money? Because it's this generalized form of buying power. So that having sold me the bread or the pair of shoes or the jacket or the glasses, they can proceed without having to acquire an econ lecture in selling them to me to buy the things that they desire. But at the end of the day, I am selling my economics labor services for the loaf of bread that I desire, just through the intermediation of money. And this is what Smith says is the essence of it. All of us coordinate our actions and our behaviors through our own self-interested intentions of advancing our own self-interest, but through serving others in society. This is the great society, as the term is that Smith uses, that binds and connects all of us together, without which there would be no way to bring to forth the amount of coordination that we see. Now, this is what Smith and others have come to see the importance of competition. Now, in this page where Smith refers to the invisible hand, that each man is pursuing his own self-interest, though it is no part of his intention, ends up serving the interests of others in society better than when he consciously tries to. You understand this? Again, to use the example I'll use with my students in the United States. There's some guy in the state of Iowa who has a wheat farm. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know any of my students. He doesn't even know we exist. He might even never have heard of the city of Midland, Michigan. But he's growing the wheat that will be transformed in a factory and a bakery into the bread that I end up buying at the local supermarket in Midland, Michigan. Why is he growing this wheat? He doesn't know me. He doesn't know the other people who might want to buy those baked loaves of bread with his wheat. He's doing it as the decision as to what are his skills the best at. How can he best earn a living given his knowledge, experience, his education, and what is, of course, also what he likes to do. Maybe he likes farming. He's growing that which will generate what he views as the highest income that is possible for him, so he can buy in turn the things he wants, given his skills and abilities and the resources at his disposal. He's not thinking about me. He doesn't know me. But though it is no part of his intention, he ends up producing the thing that enables me to eventually buy a loaf of bread at my local market, so when I get hungry in the middle of the night, can make that ham and cheese sandwich that I like so much. Okay? And Smith says that that's what binds all of the people together. And he goes on in that passage about the invisible hand, says, and it is no worse that it is no part of anyone's intention. He says that it is both not necessary and would be harmful to give the power to direct production of people's activities into the hands of statesmen and lawgivers. And indeed is never so dangerous as when given in the hands of a person who is arrogant enough to believe that he knows how to do it. Nothing is more dangerous, Smith is saying, than the individual who really believes that he knows how you should live better than yourself. Because then he has no restraint in doing what he considers right to make you conform to his vision of the good life. Now, why is it unnecessary? And why is it dangerous and counterproductive? Because Smith says that each individual is more knowledgeable, more informed about his own circumstances, his abilities, his skills, the surroundings in which he is, the opportunities of earning a living and how to earn a living and how to use his resources, better than any statesman or lawgiver in a faraway capital, who does not have the same self-interested motive to at least, as best he can, to get it right in what he does so as not to get it wrong. Do you go out of your way to screw things up? Now, your parents may sometimes think you do, but you don't really do this intentionally to screw things up, right? None of us do. That doesn't mean we don't have regrets. Okay? We live in a world of imperfect knowledge of imperfect people. We sometimes emotionally get wrapped up in the moment and do not always think carefully enough about the consequences a little bit down the road. But none of us intentionally tries to do that which will make us worse off. We may make bad decisions, and we may or may not regret them later on, but we are at a moment of choice. We are never doing anything intentionally to make ourselves worse off. Given our circumstances, we're always trying to make the best of it to get the most out of it that we can. With the knowledge of our circumstances and our abilities that we possess, which no planner and regulator and controller in a capital can ever know, with the clarity, the distinction, and the detail that each person in the society has about his own personal circumstances. It is best to leave these matters in the hands of the people themselves, who have this knowledge of their own circumstances, and to use it as best they can, with the admission that people make mistakes, misjudge things, get things wrong occasionally. But all things considered, the people who are acting in their own interest, with their own knowledge of circumstances, will more likely to get it right than someone who has no such self-interest, but claims to direct all of us in what we do. That's why Smith and others, particularly a famous Austrian economist, since it was mentioned earlier, named Friedrich Hayek, referred to competition as a discovery procedure. It is through people in that open system of natural liberty, as Adam Smith called it, it is through competition that we discover who is the best, who can do it at the least cost, who can devise ways to make it better, who can devise ways to make it new and innovative in comparison to the current ways of doing things. It's precisely because we don't have the knowledge of the results of a competition that we hold the competition. Think of a race. If we had a perfect knowledge, let's say like a marathon race, of who was going to come in first, who was going to come in second, third, fourth, fifth, and their relative times as well as their place positions, why would we bother to hold the race? It would be redundant. Why exhaust yourself running around a track if you already know the outcomes with exact, complete knowledge? It's precisely because we don't know who's the fastest runner, who can come in second, who's likely to come in third. Even when someone has come in first or second, a lot of times, circumstances change. We age. Young members come into the race. We develop new ways to exercise and train, different clothing to wear, the elements depending upon the weather of the day. And as the phrase goes, sometimes our biorhythms are just out of sync. A whole variety of things are at work on us. A whole variety of things are at work on us. We don't know the outcomes of a competition until the competition is held. Now, if we understand this in the realm of sports, like a race, why should we think it's any different in the marketplace? Who can make that new product? Who can make that less expensive product? Who can make that better product? Who can offer it in ways that consumers will find more attractive and useful than the competitors and rivals? We don't know how the outcome of that, other than holding the market competition of allowing supply-side rivals to try. And this generates itself as a method of excellence. How do I get what I want in society? Not by hitting you over the head, not by robbing you when you're not home, not by cheating and defrauding you. No. How do I get ahead? By making something better, improved, less costly than the other guy as a means of getting your business so I can have the income to buy the things I want. So this is a method of excellence through peaceful competition by which we resolve our conflicts as to getting the things we want from others without violence and corruption and force. It is a way of making potential human conflict into a peaceful process that can benefit all. There are conflicts in society. A shoemaker, a shoe store owner wants your business because if he sells you the shoes, he has the income to then buy what he wants. But so is the other shoe store owner. He wants you to buy his shoes instead. But what is the rules of the market? If I go into the shoe store and I try on the shoes, well, you know, okay, it looks okay. You know, and they always have like that little mirror on the ground, on the floor. You know, you look at it, it looks okay, I guess. And you walk around there a few minutes, well, it seems kind of, I don't know, you know, oh, the price, forget it. So now you're walking out the shoe store. Have you ever been in a shoe store and some guy at the door says, the boss, the owner of the store, the boss wants to know, how come you didn't buy a pair of shoes? Well, you know, I tried it on, but the price, you got to be kidding. You ain't leaving until you buy a pair of shoes. What? It doesn't work that way. You can't be forced. So how does he get your business instead of you buying your shoes from the other shoe store down the road or down a few retail stores in the shopping mall? By devising the ways of making it attractive and better, comfortable, and to see if he can make it at a better price than the other guy. So excellence to get what he wants, your business, so he can have the money that he wants to be able to buy the things he wants, but not through violence and fraud and theft, but through a competition of excellence. Everybody's mind put at the service of the rest of the society as the self-interested method for themselves to try to get what they want. This is the peaceful way to settle the fact that we want the same things, but not everybody can have what they want to the same extent. And notice, people in this peaceful competition must be treated with that dignity and respect. You know, there's these little catchphrases if you study business. Service with a smile. The customer is always right. Why? Because what if you own a store and you know your wife was giving you a hard time before you left home that day, and you took the dog for a walk and it wouldn't do its business. You were out forever walking it. Tell me, I've experienced that many times. I have a dog, and it's raining. Anyway, now when you get to the store, you can't open the store and your customer goes, what do you want? Because you just had a lousy morning at home. You have, how can I help you? What can I show you? Let me know if there's something that I might have in the back. Right? You have to show courtesy, politeness, etiquette, manners. In fact, this is the market's way, in self-interest, that generates a culture of polite society. It begins in self-interest. If I'm rude to the customer, he's not going to buy from me, I'm out of the sale. But if you do it one day and another day, it becomes habit. It becomes routine. Like anything that becomes a habit. It often is conscious, and then it just becomes unconscious. You just do it. And that becomes part of courtesy and manner and politeness in society. Again, how the market itself makes for a more humane society. And certainly politeness, courtesy, and manner is part of a humane society, at least an element of it. This is the beauty of this method of the market. Now, how then does this market work? How does this market work? Yes, people are specializing, they're thinking of how to producing what others may want, but what assures that the supplies match the demand? That the coordination is coming about, particularly since we live in a world of what? Change, right? You're all business, many business students taking econ courses. Consumer preferences change. Yesterday I liked hot cereal, today I like cold cereal. Yesterday I liked to eat meat, now I'm a vegetarian. Right? People's preferences change. Supplies change. Resources are more available, less available. Technologies change, how to produce things. The cost of things as well as the price of things are changing for these reasons. So the world is constantly changing on the supply side and the demand side. How do we assure a constant tendency? I didn't say perfect matching every moment of every day. A constant tendency that the supplies match the demands, that the goods in the stores are actually the ones we're interested in buying, and usually in the qualities that we're looking for, and pretty much most of the time prices that, all things considered, we're willing to pay. How does this come about? How does the price system work? How do profits and losses act as the guides and the signals for people to work? And that is what we will pick up with if you show up tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Tune in tomorrow for the next episode. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, again, we have a few minutes before 9 for any questions, comments, thoughts, reflections, ruminations on the meaning of life. You all want to go home and study, right? Yeah, right. No questions? Oh, a question back there. See, he's holding you here, you bad person, you. Okay, yes.
Do you think the large inequalities in wealth, say in the United States, can you hear me?
A little louder, please.
Do you think the large inequalities in wealth destroy competition in the United States today?
Okay, the question is, do I think the degree of inequality of wealth in the United States harms competition? No, I don't. Now, let me make something clear here. There is market-based inequality of income, and there's political-based inequality of income. Political inequality of income is when some people get taxed and that wealth is redistributed to others. This is sort of like, I would argue, when we had the financial crisis, all of Americans are now taxed to bail out financial institutions, and not one corporate executive takes a salary cut or loses their job. Right? His relative income position is being maintained while the rest of the economy is suffering. That's political inequality of income that is maintained through redistribution of wealth through the tax system. Then there's reasonable inequality that doesn't bother me at all, but is itself a sign of success in the market. Take someone like Bill Gates of Microsoft, or the former Steve Jobs of Apple. Right? These guys are like multi-billionaires, right? Now, to my knowledge, Steve Jobs never took government money. You know, he didn't have a subsidy. He built Apple, as far as I know. At least from the little, I haven't read that famous biography that came out right after he died, but you know, things I've read. He didn't take government money. He didn't even graduate from college. He and a guy came up with these ideas, and he built this company by how? By making a product that enough of us thought as useful and valuable to pay a price for that cumulatively your buying of an iPhone, your buying of an iPad, so on, added up to the multi-billions that he earned, right? Did Steve Jobs force me to buy this? No. Did he twist my arm? Did I come into an Apple store and he prevent me from leaving without purchasing one? No. I chose to buy this because of the convenience, the features, the enjoyment of how to use it. Okay? So every dollar that Steve Jobs earned, I do not begrudge him, even though he had an income far beyond everything that I will earn in my lifetime, because he's honest by making this better product that we freely chose to buy. That is the carrot that attracts people to be hardworking. And how do they earn their millions and billions? By making things that we, who may have more modest incomes, buy because it improves the quality, the conveniences, and the enjoyments of life. That's the advantage, the idea that if you make that better mousetrap, you can be a financial success. That's the motivation that guides a successful competitive economy. And they only make their millions and billions by making things that we, the consumers, value enough to buy and make our lives better. So I don't begrudge that at all. But the companies, like in the United States, there was this famous fiasco of a solar company that got $500 million of government subsidies. Solyndra, it's called. Maybe you probably heard, some of you heard of it. And you know, it's gone. All these executives ran away with $500 million of taxpayer money, right? They got wealthier, and the taxpayers were that much poorer. I consider that unjustifiable inequality. You got money by picking other people's pockets, but just using a politician to do it rather than doing it, you know, on the street. I mean, but it's the same thing. You're picking somebody's pocket. You just have an agent do it for you. You know, you hire somebody to do the pocket picking, right? It's called a politician. So that's unjustifiable inequality. Okay. Anything else?
That's basically a misallocation of investment, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. It's a misallocation. Right.
Brought about by central planning.
Right. The government decided that they knew what kind of energy production we should have. And they therefore presumed to know better than other people in the market and the consumers what they wanted to buy. But fundamentally, from the perspective where I was just talking about, it's pocket picking. Okay? You pay someone else to do the dirty work because you don't want to be the pocket picker yourself. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I hopefully will see. Oh, a comment. One more. Okay.
Just two questions.
Yeah.
In small economies where... Two questions here. In small economies where you have a business that monopolizes all the services, for example,
right,
utility services, how do you see this as affecting the growth and development in the free market?
Right. The question is, what happens if you have an economy, a small economy, in which government controls or dominates major essential industries like water supply, electricity, and so on? I think it is a path of political corruption and economic stagnation. Why? Well, there's no competition, right? Where's the competition to see if someone could supply energy more efficiently and less expensively, or water, or in a way that doesn't involve political corruption? Because somebody's getting paid in the government to provide these services. So it's a civil servant's salary. They make these decisions. So I think it's open to political corruption and inefficiency. Now, I was on, what was that, whose show was I on? Jeff Lloyd's radio talk show yesterday. He actually had a substitute host. But one of the questions I was asked, well, what do you do about these things? Like, you know, government monopoly of electricity and water and stuff. I said, try to privatize it. Have an open, transparent competition, an international competition among companies who offer to take over the government electricity or water agencies, and in their bids to show that they're going to, over let's say a 5-year period of the contract, to show a trend of lower costs and improved quality. If they don't, at the end of their 5-year contract, they're obviously not going to be renewed, and they are not even allowed to compete again for renewal of the contract. It's open again. So there, you place them in the self-interest. Do you want the contract? Do you want to have the opportunity to compete to keep the contract in the next contract period, another 5 years or something? Then you have to show and demonstrate that you can run it more efficiently, of a better quality, and less corruptly, because the government's going to be hands-off then. But otherwise, you just have corruption and economic inefficiency and stagnation. That at least would be a way of trying to infuse market-type principles into the provision of even these types of services. It couldn't be worse than what you have. Okay, you know, there may not be like an ideal nirvana solution, but it would be likely better than the one you have. It's better to approach betterness than not.
Can I make a further comment on that?
Sure.
That sometimes we think that competition wouldn't be possible because we've been having a monopoly created by government for so long that we cannot conceive it. But entrepreneurs will find a way.
Absolutely. I mean, this was the situation in the U.S. with a number of services, including television transmissions. The U.S. basically gave a, quote, monopoly to 3 television networks back in the 1920s, first with radio and then television. In the U.S., they're called NBC, CBS, and ABC. You probably get them on cable here, I guess. Okay, they were the monopoly from the 1920s, first with radio, then after World War II with television, until the late 1970s and 1980s, when that was all deregulated, and they allowed cable and satellite. As the technologies developed, now do we worry about, I remember as a little kid, well, there's nothing on ABC, there's nothing on CBS. Now you have like hundreds of channels specialized to every consumer taste and preference. Nothing like, and I'll tell you another thing, when I was a little kid, that was before you had the remote control. I was the remote control. My mom would say, "Oh, change the channel," but I just did. Get up and change it again. I was the remote. Anyway.
Okay,
one more. Okay.
What you shared with us earlier resembles what I would consider the barter system. I remember my mother telling us about my great-grandmother during her time.
Right.
The field, some people would have corn in their field. Right. Another family might have okras. Right. And they traded instead of using cash.
Right.
And so I wanted to know whether there is a similarity in what you shared with us earlier.
Well, the example, of course, I was using what was a barter type example. I make the shoes and I sell the shoes for the food that I want. But the point is that you don't need to have a barter arrangement like that to have a functioning market economy. In fact, you couldn't have a functioning market economy, because what if I'm growing corn, you have okra, but I don't like okra and you don't like corn. I mean, we're not going to be able to trade or something. So through a long process, societies have developed money as a medium of exchange, which takes care of that problem. But the fact is that I was saying, I trade my teaching services for money, and I use the money to buy the food in the market that I want, but ultimately it's my teaching services that's paying for the food that I want, because I wouldn't have the money to buy that food if I didn't first supply a teaching service that some people valued enough to pay me that money income. So ultimately it's my teaching services that are paying for the food that I buy. It's just indirectly through the transactions of money. All righty, well, thank you very much, and hopefully see a bunch of you tomorrow.